All right, I think we are good to go. So, hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Yuval. I work at the J Street Israel office. And today I am very, very excited to introduce to you two people who I am proud to call J Street's friends and partners, Amira Mohammed and Ibrahim Ahmad. You can unmute and say hi.
Hey,
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here with you.
definitely a pleasure.
So, Um, Ibrahim and Amira are both peace activists, as well as the hosts of a podcast which started after October 7th and has gotten a lot of attention on social media called Unapologetic, the Third Narrative. On this podcast, which I strongly recommend, Amira and Ibrahim are discussing the current moment through their unique lens as both Palestinian and Israeli identifying. Now, before we start, a few technological notes. A recording of this discussion will be publicly available later in the day on our JStream page and on our YouTube channel. And a link to this will be sent in the chat. In addition, throughout the session, you can send your requests to Ibrahim and Amira using the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screens, and we will try to get as many as possible. And now I would like to formally introduce our wonderful speakers. So Amira Mohammed is a Palestinian Israeli peace activist from Sheikh Jarrah, East Jerusalem. She has a BA in medical imaging from Al-Quds University. After years of simultaneously pursuing both healthcare and peace building fields, she decided to turn her activism and passion into her full-time career. Amira has dedicated her life to promote tolerance, acceptance, and advocate for the rights of Palestinians across the map. She works with multiple peace initiatives that focus on trilateral collaborations between Palestinians, Israelis, and the broader region that provide leadership and civil society. She is also a sought-after speaker and runs workshops for NGOs. Amira is the co-creator and co-host of the podcast Unapologetic, the Third Narrative. Ibrahim Abu Ahmad is an Arab-Palestinian Israeli activist, geopolitical speaker, and writer. Ibrahim is also the co-host of the podcast Unapologetic. Ibrahim speaks to various groups, including students, journalists, elected officials, and policymakers. His field of expertise includes the challenges of the Arab minority in Israel, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the war in Syria, the instability in Lebanon, and Iranian intervention in the region, among others. Ibrahim has a master's degree in national security from the international program at Haifa University and a bachelor's degree in international relations. Ibrahim began his studies at the American University in Cairo, Egypt, but in 2011, following the Arab Spring, transferred to the United States, where he completed his studies at James Madison University. Ibrahim was born and raised in Nazareth and today lives in Herzliya in central Israel. So, Ibrahim and Amira, again, thank you so much for joining us today. I would like to start by asking you a couple of questions. You can both take whichever question you would like. And after we finish with this, we will address the Q&A section in our chat. And if possible, I would like to start with a little personal question, which is how are you doing and what have these past months been like for you? Feel free to take it. Yes, Ibrahim.
No, ladies first, I'm saying.
Ladies first.
See, it's amazing working with Ibrahim. These past months, well, I assume everyone in this chat can agree that these past months have been a roller coaster of emotions, not in a good way. And I won't like drag the answer, even though I can talk to days of how devastated and saddened I am to see just like the actual events that are happening on the ground here, and the division and the polarization that's happening around the world due to the conflict right here. So wishing and hoping for better days, but it's not great.
Yeah, it's been absolutely a very difficult and challenging time for both of us and for everyone in general. Um, you know, we definitely struggled, even though, like, if you see in our podcast, we talk and we have these energies all the time, but we work on ourselves constantly to maintain the positivity. There are days that I'm more hopeful and positive, Amira is more down, and then it flips, and each time one of us will give support and uplift the other. And for me, I would just say that in the past couple months, one thing that struck to me, that my belief in a better future haven't wavered, not even by a 0.001%, but the urgency that we need to make changes multiplied by 100. And this is exactly why we started the podcast, and we'll talk about that later on.
Thank you so much for your candid responses. We definitely all feel the weight of these terrible days. I would like for you both to tell me a little bit more about your background, growing up in Sheikh Jarrah and in Nazareth, and your communities, and how did that bring you into the field of peace building?
Ibrahim, you can go ahead and start this time.
Sure. So I come from Nazareth. I come from the Arab community here in Israel, Arab Citizens of Israel, as the politically correct term would address. I personally view myself after so long, and we're a community that lives in an identity crisis, I would say, because we're stuck between being Israeli as citizens and Palestinians in terms of people. And there's all these questions of who we are and where we are. And as a community, it's something that we live, that struggle of being in a limbo in a way. But actually, for me, I noticed that's actually not a bad thing. It's actually, we would say, a blessing and a curse. And I just look at the blessing of it, that we do have dual views to the conflict. We can look at the conflict from two eyes. And I always say this, because of our unique position of being both. Because I personally identify myself after so long of trying to understand my identity as everything. I'm an Arab, I'm a Palestinian as part of the Palestinian people, and I'm an Israeli as part of the Israeli society, not just by de facto citizen. I'm also part of the society itself. So I'm all of these things together. And the fact that I'm these both two, in a way, conflicting identities gave me the understanding that I'm in a privileged place where I can see the world from both sides. I can have an eye that can look at the world from a Palestinian view and one that can look from an Israeli view. And really, it brought me to a place where I can understand both sides of the conflict. I grew up in Nazareth, but I was privileged that my cousins grew up in a Jewish community, actually, and spoke Hebrew very early on. I met Jewish kids as a 4, 5, 6-year-old, and I met the people before the politics. So I never looked at them on a political perspective. I just looked at it as people other kids who speak a different language, and I want to learn that language. So I started to learn it individually even before going to school. So that gave me an exposure to the reality of what it is to be Israeli, the Jewish reality, Jewish history. I got exposed to it early on. And then I realized later on in life, when I started, studying, and I started working as a political analyst, and my vision of the world that I wanted to be a political analyst, like going maybe on the media and talk about the conflict in different ways because of the unique position I have, looking at the world from both sides, because I was always disappointed by the political analysts we see. But then I realized that my place is not there. My place is in the peace advocacy world, because I started speaking and engaging to groups. And people would ask me about who are the Arab Citizens of Israel. We were kind of a byproduct of the conflict, an invisible community in this conflict. And I wanted to put that community as the center of the conflict, because I believe, because of that unique position of seeing the two sides, that we can actually be the real mediators of the conflict, because we're both, and we speak both languages, and we see and live both realities in the same time. And this is what put me in a place where I wanted to speak more and engage and give lectures. And I've been doing it in the past 5 years to tell our story and to share our complexity and show the opportunities that lie. And it all, got to that big place where it stopped being just speaking to groups, but speaking publicly after the podcast started. And yeah, it's been a long road of peace advocacy, and I'm ready to continue all the way.
We're so happy to have you, Ibrahim.
My pleasure.
Amira?
Yeah, sure. So firstly, I apologize if there's any background noise. If not, I'll come closer to the mic. Just let me know. So my background is a little bit different than Ibrahim's. It's been a journey. It still is, to actually discover the different paths that Palestinians and people from our tiny place in the region go through, and how similar yet very different we are. So like you first presented, I'm from Sheikh Jarrah, I'm from East Jerusalem, and by international law, East Jerusalem is recognized to be part of the occupied Palestinian territories. However, it's inside of the wall. It's inside of the border. So I have access to the West Bank, and I also have access to the broader, what is known to be Israel. And the most of East Jerusalemites are actually residents and not citizens of Israel. What that means is you basically are in a state of limbo, where you don't have a static future. In addition to that, if you don't abide by the state's laws and regulations, your temporary residency can be revoked. I am privileged, and I stress on the word privileged, enough to have Israeli citizenship because of my mom. My mom has Israeli citizenship, so she passed it on to me, and I was born with it. However, because of the bubble and how East Jerusalem is constructed by all the powers that be, I lived the life of a Jerusalem resident. I didn't know the difference between what it is to be a resident and an Israeli citizen, other than the fact that I can travel more easily. And as a kid, and even as a teenager and young adult, I didn't really grasp what that meant, because I didn't go through, or have anyone go through in front of me, the process of traveling. And then I quickly graduated from East Jerusalem, and I graduated from pretty private school, tried to apply to try to integrate into Israeli society. And I found so many barriers from language. I don't speak fluent Hebrew. I have been learning in the past year and learning from scratch. I took the Palestinian education system and graduated from the Tawjihi. And that was also an obstacle for me to enter the Israeli education system. So I ended up studying in the West Bank in Al-Quds University in Abu Dis. And like you said, in the first, I was directed towards healthcare. And throughout my years of study, I got introduced to peace programs, not knowing that they were peace programs. I thought I was meeting a bunch of foreigners, to be completely honest. And then I understood that these foreigners are not just Jewish, they're Israeli, and they live with me. Because throughout my entire life, unlike Ibrahim, I met the politics, I met the occupation before I met the people. I went through a partial home demolition. I would go through checkpoints, raids, and clashes and that was my regular. And then after 2021 happened, and everything was going down in Sheikh Jarrah, I got to witness many things in my own neighborhood, and that gave me the agency to actually split healthcare. And it made me also see how much of a minority within a minority I am, being a Palestinian woman, and being a woman in Palestinian society, and being a Palestinian in Israeli society. So me saying that I'm a Palestinian Israeli is more of a political statement, because I feel like I'm not accepted by both. So I have decided to lead by example and accept both. So that's me. And how it led me towards peace. Yeah, I answered that.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I answered it. That's when after that, I went into the peace building field. I got the pleasure to get introduced to Ibrahim through work about a year ago. And I've been just working towards advocacy. And now is the time. Like we said, and we'll talk about it later on. It's a now or never kind of moment.
Yeah, that's incredibly interesting, Amira, and you are an inspiration to me personally. So I think we're ready to talk about the podcast. Tell us, how did it start? How did it come about? And if you can, please describe to us, what is this third narrative that you're trying to build through your podcast?
So I like to tell the first part of the story because me and Ibrahim have been talking about doing something ourselves for so long prior to the like undescribable situation that we are in right now. We were discussing, like we were flirting with the idea, should it be a podcast? Should we write more articles? What language should we use? What is our target audience? And it was just like an idea that was floating there. And then after the brutal attack on the 7th of October, that I don't know what else to describe it. It's undescribable. I remember feeling, and then after that, seeing the start of war and bombardment on Gaza, and being affected, both of us, so from both sides, and feeling pulled. I think like we felt kind of hopeless that we couldn't do anything. And when you're an activist, when you have dedicated your life for this, and specifically when it's needed most, you can't do anything. It's the worst feeling that you can ever feel. And I remember getting a call through the first week from Ibrahim, just straight up telling me, Amira, the podcast, we're doing it now. Are you in? And I was like, yes, definitely. When are we recording? And we recorded within the same time period. And we didn't think, we were just torn and so heartbroken by not just, like I said, the situation here, but also the amount of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism that was tearing people apart around the world. As for the third narrative, it's more, if I would describe it, and I'll let Ibrahim describe it in his own way, it's more of an invitation, an embrace to have a discussion, to acceptance, and to take accountability, and not the usual pro-Israel, anti-Palestine, and the pro-Palestine, anti-Israel kind of dialect.
Yeah, I think just to go off of what Amira said, the reason why we decided to do it so early on and to do it in English also is because we started to see, first of all, we realized that it was too early to talk to the Israeli and the Palestinian communities in the first week of the war. But we already saw the dangers of how the war is in two ways. We were seeing the effect on the Western world. One was, like Amira said, the intensification of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, something that affected the West itself by our conflict. And the second part was that the two narratives, that's why we're the third. We started to see two narratives that are coming out, very polarized narratives, pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian. And in a way, we started to see the support being one-sided. And as we describe it in the podcast, it felt like a football match where we're two teams, and the international community sitting on the stands, and they're fans, and they're cheering for one side to defeat the other in this game. And we recognize the importance of the West. We recognize the importance of the international community being so engaged in this conflict. But what we wanted to do is for that voice to come from the international community, to come for a place of end the conflict altogether. Help us push to end the conflict. Don't help us win the conflict for one side or the other. Help us end it altogether and in a peaceful way. And that was the first message that we wanted to bring out there. And this is why it's the third narrative, because we saw that, especially in the international, in the Western world, it's like you have to abide by what would be so-called the pro-Palestinian bloc. And if you stir away from it, you're already outside of it and you're joining the other side, and vice versa. And what we wanted to create is a place where you can be pro both. If you're pro-humanity, you can be pro-Israeli. You can be a very proud Jewish Zionist pro-Israeli, but also understanding and recognizing the Palestinian people. So you can be with us. Same holds true for someone who's very nationalist Palestinian, but recognize the Jewish people and the existence of the state and looking for a path forward. This is the place for you. You don't have to be either or. You can be both. And you can just a place to show empathy and compassion to everyone.
Thank you both. I have to say, you both have such a brave take on the situation, and just the third narrative of itself is very brave. It's very brave nowadays to say anything in Israel, and so I thank you both. And I do wonder, what was the reception of your podcast, both at home, within your own communities, but also abroad? You mentioned that the podcast was in English in order to appeal to the international community. So how was the international community responding, and including the US as well?
Amira, all you.
Okay. So the response of the podcast, honestly, it was positively surprising, even more. We did expect a positive response, but it was so inspiring and encouraging to see how much people want to hear the voice of hope, because there is lack of that everywhere currently, especially in the beginning. I'm not saying that we don't have people that criticize us. No, like if everyone was nodding their heads to us, then we're doing something wrong and we're not doing something right. So before getting into statistics, just like from in the beginning, our personal connections, like the first episode, was like our friends, both Israeli and Palestinian, thanked us for our bravery, thanked us for saying something that everyone's thinking but no one is saying. And then when it got a little bit more traction and started to go a little viral on social media, I'm proud to say that we currently have like a few, 2 or 3 more followers, and we'll hit 19,000 followers, and this is in the span of about three, maybe 3.5 months. And what I'm most proud of is the comments, the dialogue that we're able to spark between Israelis themselves and between Palestinians themselves, and between the both sides, even how much I hate to call them sides, but between both. The comments, the questions, the curiosity that we're able to bring about, to remind people that we have different narratives. Like, yes, we're not going to agree. We're not. The idea is to listen and to understand the pain of both sides while disagreeing, which is a skill that is really lacking right now. And in the beginning, like we said, we focused on English because we felt like the wound was too fresh to touch, both on the Israeli and the Palestinian side. I think it's still fresh right now. However, we have started to to put subtitles on our videos in three languages: Arabic, English, and Hebrew. On the long run, inshallah, we'll start posting videos in the 3 languages, depending on our situation and situation abroad, and the acceptance of that, and the response to that. But it has been positive. Unfortunately, the support, like the loud support, is in the DMs. It's in our private messages. It's in the emails, especially from the Arab world and the Palestinian world. But it is there. It is there, and it's slowly getting out there more and more. And we have vocal people talking, and we're going to host also vocal people.
Yeah, and it's important to mention that everything that we've done, and this widespread of the podcast, is actually what's interesting is that we started it it's organic. We haven't done any promotion to any of the videos on social media. We haven't paid for promotion or anything like that. Everything was done organically, and people just listening to the podcast and spreading the word, and it just expanded and expanded in a way that we knew, like, we had faith and belief in our message, but just the how fast it spread was incredible to see. So today we're almost at 60,000 plays total to our 8 episodes that have been published, and 46% of our audience, almost half of our audience, comes from the US. And actually, we have at least one play in each of 48 out of 50 states. We only have 2 states that we haven't had any plays, so please share them to both Dakotas, because we haven't had any plays there. So we would love to have our voice also heard in the North and South Dakota as well. But everywhere else in the US, we had at least one person play our podcast, and we're very proud of it. And we've and the people have contacted us, honestly, like so many that would tell us their story, their complexity. People would want to share what happened to them, how did they feel face discrimination, how they feel they're part of the third narrative, where their complexity comes into play. And it's been great to just try to talk to people and, hear their views, read their questions. And we've been trying to address everyone's questions on episodes that we allocated for Q&A. So it's not just us talking without, any response. No, we want to have your questions. We want to address them. And even when it's the most toughest questions, those are the ones we're going to talk about, because we don't shy away from complexity and difficult questions and difficult topics, which some might. But for us, it's like, no, we need to face it head on and show that it's okay to talk about difficult things, complex, and show that, we can have a conversation, and we might not agree on everything, but we can accept each other's views and accept each other. And we've seen that with our community. It's actually, I see it as a growing community. The third narrative, and this is what we're looking at, is a community, a movement, a place for people to be in. And we're seeing that. We're seeing even in the comments, like Amira said, people would argue, and then someone would say, well, if you are in the third narrative, we need to accept each other. And it's so beautiful to see that. And the discussion is being held within the realm of the third narrative. And we're very, very proud of that. And the other thing I would say is that, especially in the US, and especially among the American Jewish community, a lot of the people who are talking about the Arab minority in Israel are now addressing us as Palestinian Israelis, which is a term that me and Amira are putting out there. It's not an existing term in Israel today. People, Arab citizens either refer to themselves as Israelis or Palestinians. To embrace both is something that we're trying to bring forth, and we see that there's a reception to that, and we're very, very honored by the ability to bring that forth.
That is incredibly moving. And as you said, Ibrahim, you definitely do not shy away from the difficult topics and conversations, which is my favorite thing about your podcast. And so this leads me to my next question, which is, what is one subject that you've touched on your podcast that you really feel was the most important, or you would like to dig into some more for us? Take it away.
Oh, if I have to recommend, especially to J Street supporters and in the J Street network, in episode 4, we talk a lot about the day after and what we mean by the day after, which is the role of civil society, the role of peace building, and the role of education. Where we went wrong, what were the mistakes that we made. So episode 4, and we talk about even our struggle as participants of peace building programs, and 2, as team members, as staff in peace programs. We talk about the part of how this podcast and this movement, this community is coming together, is because Ibrahim and I, we're connected to so many institutions and peace organizations. However, we decided that we want a pure Palestinian voice, like we do bring Jewish Israeli narratives. We have hosted so far 3, 2 of which were Jewish, one of which was a Druze Israeli. And we could have started this podcast being Ibrahim and I and another Israeli, but we wanted it to be a pure Palestinian voice. That's why we're also funding it from our own pockets. We are looking into avenues of funding right now, However, we also want to promote more Palestinians to speak up. No strings attached. This is what we believe in. This is what we want, and this is what we deserve, and we are going to do it. We want it to come out from within, even though we do say that we're Palestinian Israeli, but we want the Palestinians to speak up as well, and we want to encourage them a lot.
Yeah, and in that episode, we bring all the complexities of like Amira said, why things have gone wrong in a way. And I can also say, and to add that even recently, I've actually had a research that I was doing on sports peace organizations in Israel and Palestine, and why aren't they working? And I came with the same conclusion, is that the fact is that almost all the peace organizations are Jewish Israeli led. And that makes it difficult for Palestinians to join, to trust that it's also theirs. It feels like it's somebody else's project that you are joining into, and it's not yours. It doesn't speak your community's needs. And sometimes when it has this kind of leadership, also you miss on some of the cues, some of the social cues, cultural. I've noticed that one of the biggest obstacles is language. And here I would give credit to one specific sports organization that does that, and almost all the others don't. Hapoel Jerusalem, their youth group, they do each practice in each language, one in Arabic, one in Hebrew, one in English. Even the staff and the coaches take courses in Arabic, Hebrew, and English to strengthen all languages. And that is crucial. And, as a kid who did these programs, I remember that we would sit in the fourth grade, we would sit with an Israeli Jewish counterpart school, and then I was the only one who spoke Hebrew. Every one of my friends needed to come and ask me to translate words for them. Why? Because all the pressure was on us. We have to speak your language. We have to talk to you, and we have to make that extra mile. And we talk about the importance of language in the future that we aspire, because then if both of those little kids try and throw out the little few Arabic words that he knows, and the Jewish kids would throw the Arabic kid would throw out a little bit of the Hebrew that he knows, they will figure it out. But to put all the pressure on one side does not work. And these are some of the things that we've seen, and this is why we wanted to be a Palestinian thing. We didn't we would have been it would have been great to have an Israeli one in the podcast, but in this particular setting and now, and even hearing from other Palestinian peace activists that they're struggling, that they don't feel that their voice is being represented, even among the peace community, because there's a gap was created between the Israeli peace activists and the Palestinian peace activists. And in order to fill that gap, the Palestinian peace activists need to speak alone. And I've actually spoken to a lot of people trying to, uplift people to speak, but people are hesitant. People are, wondering, should we ask the community? And I remember I told a colleague of ours, and then I told Amira, I was like, listen, I'm not asking for anyone's permission. We know what we believe in. We know the message that we want to bring out. When people realize that we're doing it for the better good, they will join. But to ask for permission, I'm not going to wait for anyone. We need to act now. It's now or never. And this is exactly why we did it in that way.
I would just add a small example that has to do with the current situation and the language that Ibrahim touched upon and described beautifully and on point. So ever since like the current situation that we're in, the brutal war, we have many organizations that I work with are kind of reevaluating their strategy. They're reevaluating, how do I bring the people together? And then one of the things that I always suggest is, like, you need to bring them together internally first, and then make them feel like they're a community, make them feel that they have a voice, that they're secured, build the trust with you and your Palestinians, the trust between you and your Israelis, before you even ask yourself when you're going to bring them together. And usually I'm not in the back seat. So this time I wanted to write the emails, I wanted to do everything. And I realized that even emails to the Palestinians are written in English, even when it's just for the Palestinians. So this time we tried a strategy, and I made sure, like, to send it in Arabic. And when I met the people that came that I haven't seen in so long, told me, you know why I came? I came because the email was in my language. I felt included. I felt spoken with and not to. And I have to say that community is building. This is kind of like alongside Unapologetic and all the work that I do also. This is also an additional passion project. There's a group of Palestinians from inside of Israel, from Jerusalem, and from the West Bank that meet every single week on Zoom. And we just discuss what we think. Like, oh, you're a Christian Palestinian. What does that mean to you? How do you feel when you leave Bejal and Bethlehem to Ramallah? And how do you feel when you come to Jerusalem? Does Jerusalem mean as much to you as it means to me? And just like, how does Jerusalemites look to Arab Israelis, like to the politically correct term Arab Israelis? And it's a fascinating conversation that we never have, because there's always an Israeli Jew in the room, and we're having, even if we do, it's had in English. Or in Hebrew, if that's the mutual language of all. So that is like a highlight that we would love to talk more and more and more about.
Fascinating. Speaking of languages, can I ask, where are most of your listeners from? Are they Jewish, Arab, Israeli, from other Arab countries?
So the vast majority are from the US. 46% of our listeners come from the US, which is the highest. The second one is in Israel. 13% come from Israel, and primarily, honestly, from the center area of Tel Aviv, in that area. And then 10% from Canada, 7% from Australia, and then 6% from the United Kingdom and Germany. So we are reaching the audience that we are looking for. And there is a lot of, like, there's a huge support, and from the listeners that come from the Jewish community. A lot of people, tell us their story, their struggle as a Jewish American. Some of the wonderful messages that we would get from people like, I'm a Jewish American, I grew up here, I have these struggles as being a minority, I can relate to you on these things. And it's a beautiful conversation, and it's a beautiful discussion that we start to have even on the inbox with people, and DMing with people, and learning from them, and answering their specific questions, and they wanting to know more about our community, or how do we feel about certain Jewish aspects. So absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think probably at least half of our audience comes from the Jewish community. The Arab part is it's there. It's not as large, but we are looking for ways to expand it more. We started to see increase, like Amira said, after we started translating videos to Arabic. Arabic is the language is a barrier, apparently, so we need to address that. And we're looking for also friends who are experts on social media to help us reach more to the Arab world. But I get messages privately from Arab friends, people from the northern area, people who are, by our side, supporting us, pushing us, and even would watch the episode and give us, like, write down their comments and talk to us about things that they, think we should address this, and why didn't we mention, and it's just great conversations, and we're very grateful for that.
Wonderful. So I would like to take some questions from the audience and make sure we leave enough time for that. So we have a question from Carol Johnson asking, do you ever feel that your lives are at risk due to your activism when traveling in Israel? And another question, which correlates with this question, from Marcia Yerman: can you deal with the issue of normalization criticisms as recently seen by the attacks on Standing Together?
I was gonna like, I took a little peek at the questions, and that would, like, if you didn't mention that question, I was gonna choose it also. I was a big person that was like advocating on the ground, but like, it was kind of a revolution when I made a LinkedIn and wrote everything on one page, because of the safety concerns, because of all of that. Us being public does not mean that we do not care, and it does not mean that we are not at risk. from both sides. We are seeing the countless and countless of arrests from the Israeli government to people to the normal public, like the Palestinian public that lives within Israel, and when they try to express themselves or show any sort of sympathy with Gaza, the amount of people that are losing their jobs due to that also, and the criticism of very outspoken organizations. And then comes, and I'll finish that point. For me personally, after the 7th of October, throughout right now, and specifically in the first month, when I just can hear the sirens and the bombs exploding on top of my apartment. An apartment 15 minutes from mine was actually hit. I got a horrifying message today from my friend in Gaza telling me that she lost her house. And it's just like, it's relative. It's a numbers game. I could be any one of those people. And I would rather use my advocacy, my message, which I believe in deeply. And since there's a risk of my life regardless, then I'd rather do something with it. When it comes to normalization, we talk about that a lot in the podcast, and how we need to curate a new word that means that means what we mean as normalization. Because when we normalize tatbiya, we don't mean normalizing the occupation. We don't mean normalizing Palestinian oppression. We don't mean that kind of normalization. We want to normalize the ties. We want to normalize ties with each other and build communities up. So the word has negative connotations, and that needs to change. I do get nasty messages from people, both Israeli and Palestinian, telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I've got direct threats. We're not there yet. But it's not, it's something that we consider, and we keep in our considerations, but it won't stop us.
Yeah, the last thing that we're gonna look at, and we knew it, right? It's not like it's risk-free, but these people are not gonna silence us, not when there's a war going on, and we believe truly in our message. And I think this was the problem, honestly, in the past 20 years, because the situation in Gaza and the situation of the conflict was dormant in a way in the past 20 years. No one raised the flag and said the situation in Gaza needs to stop now, or in 10 years it will explode. Being silent, we cannot afford to anymore. And the loudest voices have been so far have been the voices of division, the voices that want to continue the conflict. What we need to do is to make sure that our voice is louder. Yes, it comes with a risk, but it's a risk that I'm personally, and I know Amira, I'm willing to take. Burn socially, I don't care. Honestly, I'm willing to sacrifice that. And whoever wants to think I'm a traitor or normalizer or all these things, they can think whatever they want. But I will bring that message out there regardless of what people think. And I know that a lot of people resonate with that message, but not everybody will speak it out. But those sole minority that try to threaten and frighten and to silence these voices, they're not going to get to us, and we're not going to let them do that. Absolutely.
Thank you. So we are getting a lot of questions on how can the international community support you? Is there a place to support your work? If you can share on that.
We're working on it. And because it's a new thing for both of us, creating something out of scratch. And, we started it just as this voice that we wanted to bring out there. And we started looking at, we want to expand. We want to make this a movement. And And we're looking for avenues and honestly for people to help also guide us into, and we're asking people and we're asking questions and we're contacting maybe how to turn it to an NGO or how to turn it to a business or anything like, and we're asking like all the people, what are the best avenues for us to continue? And, you know, if anyone has tips, we would love that. And I would love to share it once we have maybe a place that we can get support. I would love to share it with the J Street community, and we will be, you know, more than grateful for any support that we could have. And for now, sharing this message, sharing the podcast, sharing the third narrative as the way forward is the one that we were looking for at this moment. Our message is the most important thing for us.
Absolutely. And there are many people on this chat. So if all of you send the podcast to just one person or the Instagram page to just one person, this can already make such a huge impact. So we are getting a question from Linda Kandal. I hope I'm saying this right. She is asking, how do you see peace achievable when Hamas claims to be dedicated to the destruction of Israel?
Amira, you want to start?
I'll let you go first on this one.
How can we achieve peace when Hamas wants to destroy Israel? I mean, in every conflict that I know, one side wanted to defeat the other, but peace is able to be achieved. The fact that there is one terror organization and that is calling for the destruction of the state, it doesn't mean that the entire Palestinian people want to destroy the Israeli people and the state. And it does not mean that they can dictate what the future looks like. If we allow Hamas to dictate what the future looks like, we let them win. We let all the radicals win, because there are radicals on both sides who would love to continue this conflict. And we cannot let these people dictate our lives and dictate the future. We need to push regardless. If we look at even the last time, we were so close to a real good improvement of the situation. If we look at the 1994 and the Oslo Accord, 1992 and Oslo Accord, and up to the assassination of Prime Minister Rabin, these are the most critical moments. When you're so close to peace, those radical voices will do whatever they can to eliminate it. And guess what? And that's what happened in the 90s. We saw the highest number of terror bombings, of buses, some of the most horrendous things we saw during the peace process time, and also, and vice versa. The most horrific thing that we saw on the Israeli side was the assassination of the Prime Minister, Yitzhak Rabin. And we let them win. We let them win back then, because right after the 90s, we got into the second intifada. We cannot let these voices be the ones that decide where the future lies. Absolutely not. Hamas is an ideology. How do you eradicate ideology? By bringing a new ideology, by empowering a different ideology. And there needs to be a new voice that comes out of the Palestinian people that calls for something different. But when the international community and the world supports only the existing powers, also, if we look at the Palestinian Authority, it's no better in terms of its corruption and its lack of attention to the needs of the people themselves on the ground. It hasn't addressed really the needs. Ask someone from the West Bank, he'll tell you I'm occupied twice. One from the West Bank, one by the Palestinian Authority and one by Israel. So how can you be a representative of your people and oppressing your own people? And the international community continues to support it without any checks and balances, without any demands in return. There needs to be a demand that this conflict cannot go on, that the voices that need to be coming out are voices of discussion of peace, and the PA needs to change and to allow the Palestinians to elect their own leadership and to bring a new path. But we cannot let the fact that there is terror to prevent us. No whatsoever. There are so many places where there were terror, there were attacks. Just looking at the Irish and the Northern Ireland, there were horrific terror attacks from Northern Ireland, but they reached peace. And actually yesterday I sat down, because of the International Holocaust Day, it was the first time I've ever sat face to face with a Holocaust survivor. And guess where we did it? We did it inside the deputy ambassador of the German embassy. He was talking about the horrors that he suffered in Germany, in a German household. And if we can reach a place, and in the 30s and 40s, the Jewish people have gone to the worst thing of history, and we're able later on to reach peace with Germany, I think we can do the same.
I would just add one short point. This is like you covered everything, like I said, so beautifully and on point. I would just say highlight the protests that we saw a few days ago. The protests in Gaza by Palestinian Gazans against the war, against Hamas, calling to end the war, bring back give back the hostages. I would say empower those voices, give the Gazans a reason to, and Palestinians the reason to want to remove their own governments, to fight against, not, and I stress on this, not with Israel, but for themselves and for a better future of Palestinians. Because I'm going to be completely blunt, and we are blunt, that's why we're called unapologetic. Palestinians are not going to fight for a better future for Israelis. They're not. However, if the dialogue is, if Hamas is removed and all terror organizations is removed, this is what your life is going to look like. A beautiful education for your kids, a better job, better healthcare, better this, better that. Then you'll see more protests like that happening. Because right now they're in the most horrific situation. Hamas isn't helping them, and that's obvious, and they all know that. Because of how horrific the situation is, they are, like, we're saying that we are risking our lives and risking our safety. They're doing that to an even wider, like higher extent. So I would say to give them more of a reason to speak up, to stand up. They are right now. Let's amplify that.
Thank you so much. So we have time for, let's say, 2 or 3 more questions. We have a question from Amelie asking if you can suggest any Palestinian peace groups or initiatives with the same ethos as you and that have information in English so they can promote them. And we also have a question from Gabriela Gallagher asking, what kinds of criticism do you receive from Arabs and from Jewish, and how do you address these criticisms? So you can take one question each or answer both, whatever you would like.
I'll take the second question because I'll have to think about, like, I'll have to critically think about who I'm going to suggest. But in regards to the criticism that we get from either side, I would say most is focused, because we said that the wound is so fresh, most is focused on what we didn't say. Like, because the people who listen to our podcast, it's all productive criticism, like talk about this, talk about that, but what did you mean by this term? When it's on Instagram and social media, where we can't be informative, we can't put the entire podcast on Instagram, unfortunately. If we could, we would, but we put like the starkest snippets in order to attract people to our podcast. So people, like, when we say in one snippet we focus on something that is Israeli, then, or criticize Israel, let's say, then the Israelis it touches home, they feel personally attacked. So they're like, no, but what about this? What about that? And the same thing goes for the Palestinians. That's their kind of criticism. Why didn't you say this? Why did you use this term to describe what's happening to the Palestinians and not that? And our entire message is that it is beyond the point. It is beyond the point. We've had amazing suggestions from our listeners on who to bring, what to talk about, incredible, difficult questions. And Ibrahim, if you'd like to add, because it's getting a little noisy where I am.
It's just that the only thing I would add is just some people would give us the comment of, this is out of context. And we're like, well, we have an hour and a half of an episode that puts everything into context. And it's about you making the effort, not just to watch that 1-minute video, that it's just a promo for a whole conversation that talks about it. But I would say the fact that when we put one thing about one side and then about the other, and people are upset when you speak negatively on their about their side, or that you didn't represent their side enough, and we get it from both sides, it means that our message is good. If everyone is, it's just like good mediation, right? If everybody's not happy with the deal, it means it's a good deal. And we believe that our message is in the center. Can you remind me again, what was the first part of the question? Recommendation of people or organizations. I would say I would recommend 2 people to follow. It's definitely on Twitter to follow Ahmed Fuad al-Khatib. He's a Gazan American, very proud Palestinian, but very critical of Hamas. He brings a very real voice that gives the story from the ground, from a personal experience, someone who was born and raised there, and now he's also a proud American. And he brings a very complex view and wonderfully speaks. He doesn't shy away from criticizing Israel or Hamas, both. And he's a wonderful person. The other person is a good friend of ours who is also on episode 7 of our podcast, Hamza Awawdi, who is also a Palestinian from the West Bank, who's been speaking, especially since October 7th, about the importance and the need for peace. And he puts it beautifully. It's for the future of his son, the kid that he has. He wants to have a better future for him. So I would definitely recommend these people to follow.
Thank you for your recommendations. I think I will end with a question from Lisa Meritz. She's asking, what gives you hope? And it's also something that I wanted to ask you. What gives you hope, and what is your vision that you're working towards?
So when it comes to, and I'll quote Hamza Awawdi, that was I guess that the fact that there is no hope, the fact that there is no hope makes it so crucial to create that hope right now, to plant that seed, to show people that no, we're either going to sit, since there's no hope, that means we're either going to sit and watch things unfold, or we're going to work toward against all odds to make things better. And Ibrahim gave many, many examples on when things seemed so dark and there was no light, and it ended up with peace and with political ties. And we want to do the same, and if now, then when? If we are not going to do it, if us as Palestinians are not going to stand up and say that we want better, we deserve better, and we are going to bring that betterness, then who's going to do it for us? We've seen it for many, many years. No one's going to bring it for us. We need to bring it. And I remember my siblings. I remember my little sister. My little sister is 11 years old. And I'm the eldest. The rest of my siblings are even younger than me. And for them, not even for the further future. I was talking to my sister the other day. She on the phone, and I noticed that she wasn't talking to me in Arabic, only in English. And I asked her, "Where are you?" And she was like, "I'm in the light rail. I'm on the tram, in an only on West Jerusalem." And I was like, "Are you on purpose not speaking in Arabic?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm scared. I'm scared. There's been a lot of people who have been beaten up and arrested. I don't want that. And I also don't want that for her." So
yeah, I would say I'm an optimist by birth. It's just who I am. I'm a realist. I see that the world is a very tough place. I try to put that balance in my own life between being a realist and an optimist in the same time. I know it's tough, but I believe we can do better. And it's because, honestly, I lived it all my life. I always had Israeli friends, Jewish friends. I've seen it happen, and I've seen also people change. I remember one time, many years ago now, when I was working as a waiter as a young guy, and I had one Jewish girl who I was tutoring for the first day of work, and she told me, "Listen, I just don't want you to be offended, but I just want you to know, don't get offended, but I want you to know that I don't like Arabs. I hate Arabs." Now, there are two ways that I can approach this. One is very also acceptable to push her away, not to talk to her, not physically, but like to be far away, not to talk to her, not to just not to communicate, and just keep a distance, and to be upset, to be hurt, and that's a legitimate feeling. But then I was looking and I thought to myself, what is it gonna do if I get offended and hurt? That's not gonna do anything. So I acted as if she never uttered a word. And I treated her just like I treated every single other person in that restaurant. Every single one was my friend. And they were all Jewish. I was the only Arab guy. And 2 years later, I was invited to her wedding. And this is one story, and I have dozens of these. People can change. People are able to change. And it's about showing different. And all my life, I saw how people changed and how people can change. And there's no reason to think that this is different, that here we're in a place that there is no way forward. Why? Why was it for others? Why in other clashes, in other wars, in other even racial clashes, religious things got better in so many other places in the world throughout history. There's no need and there's no reason that this wouldn't be the same. And it's not just out of sheer hope that springs out of nothing just because I'm feeling hopeful on the inside. It happens, and it happened in the past, and it can happen in the future. And we are no different. And none of the other people out there in the world that fought for liberation, that fought for equality, that have achieved great things are better than us. We all can also do the same.
I just want to say that at this incredibly hopeless moment, you both are a beacon of hope. And I want to wrap by thanking you both so much for doing this with us today. Amira and Ibrahim, I met you both separately. I admired you both from day one individually, and I was so excited when I saw you working together. I cannot wait to see what you do next. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you all for joining us today. And we are all praying for a better day to come soon. Amen. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us, and thank you for everyone who's been listening and supportive, and for the great questions. They're very insightful and important ones, and we will continue to spread our message of tolerance and hope.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim.